All right. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Digital Sleepover. It's so good to have you back. I feel like it's been a while since we've all just, hung out and chatted about this digital world we live in.
It really has.
I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
It feels like just yesterday we were geeking out about, really listening to people online and how to find those little sparks of connection and those, giant online spaces.
I know. It's wild how much ground we've covered.
Right. But tonight, we're going deep into something that's so crucial for really connecting with people online. Digital vulnerability.
Digital vulnerability. Ooh, that sounds a little scary.
I know, right? At first, it might seem a little like a contradiction or even a little risky. But what we're going to uncover today is how letting our real selves show online. Yeah, even the messy parts can actually be the key to breaking through that feeling of loneliness and forging connections that actually feel real.
That's a really great point. We often talk about the downsides of the digital world, but there's also this incredible potential for connection that we just can't ignore.
Exactly. And our goal for this deep dive is to really get to the heart of how being authentic online can transform those feelings of isolation into deeper, more meaningful relationships.
I love that.
So we'll explore what it actually means to be vulnerable in our digital interactions, why it can feel so daunting at times, and most importantly, we're going to equip you with some very practical ways to embrace it a little more in your own life.
And you know what else? As we journey through this, we'll sprinkle in some personal stories, times when we've felt that pull to be more open or maybe hesitated to share.
I think those personal stories are going to be so valuable because it makes it real. It's not just theory. It's like, hey, this is what happened to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll also tap into the research. The psychological impact of showing vulnerability online is actually pretty fascinating. There's real science behind this.
Plus, we've got some really practical tips that you can start using right away to foster those deeper connections online.
I'm excited to get into it.
All right, so let's just jump right in. What does digital vulnerability actually look like? When we talk about it, what are we really talking about?
At its core, digital vulnerability is the willingness to be authentic in our online spaces, even when we know there's a chance that things might not go perfectly.
So it's not about pretending everything's perfect.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It's about embracing the fact that we're all the work in progress.
Okay, so give me an example. What does that look like in practice?
Think about it this way. Sharing an experience that wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. Admitting you're struggling with something or expressing an opinion that might not be the popular one. Those are all acts of digital vulnerability.
So it's about being real even when it feels risky.
Exactly. And that's where things can get a little tricky, right? It can feel really vulnerable to put yourself out there like that.
Yeah, no kidding. So what are some key concepts that can help us navigate this whole digital vulnerability thing?
Well, first and foremost, it's about embracing imperfection. Letting go of that pressure to curate this flawless online image. That's just not reality.
So true. We all have those moments where ooh, should I post this? What will people think?
Right. It's about being okay with showing those less than perfect moments, too.
I like that. Embracing imperfection. Wow.
Then there's the power of sharing honest experiences. And I'm the full story, not just the highlight reel, the ups and the downs, the struggles and the triumphs.
Because that's what makes us human.
Exactly. And finally, and this is crucial, it's about finding or creating online spaces where we feel psychologically safe to express our emotions without the fear of being judged or criticized.
That psychological safety is huge. It's so much easier to open up when you know you're not going to be attacked for it.
Absolutely. And you know what's really interesting? The research shows that when we allow ourselves to be digitally vulnerable, it can actually have a really positive impact on our mental well-being.
Really? Tell me more about that.
Well, studies have found that being authentic online can actually lead to stronger emotional bonds with others.
That makes sense. When someone shares something real with you, it creates a sense of connection that you just don't get from superficial interactions.
Right. It's like this unspoken understanding that develops. It's like you're saying, hey, I'm human, you're human. Let's connect on that level.
And I've definitely felt that. When someone online shares a personal struggle or a moment of vulnerability, and you see this outpouring of support and empathy in the comments.
It's powerful, right? It's like that vulnerability becomes a magnet for connection.
It does. And it makes me wonder, have you ever noticed that when someone is vulnerable online, it kind of gives other people permission to do the same?
Oh, absolutely. There's this ripple effect that happens. It's like someone breaks through that invisible barrier of expected perfection, and then everyone else feels a little safer to be themselves too.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that. And it really changes the whole dynamic of the online interaction, right? It goes from potentially feeling isolating to actually being supportive and community driven.
Exactly. It's like this shift from me to we.
I like that. And it makes me think, for everyone listening, have you ever felt a sense of relief or even a closer connection with someone online when they shared something that felt really real and relatable to your own life?
Those moments are so powerful
Yeah.
because they remind us that we're not alone in our experiences.
So true. But even knowing all of this, there's still that little voice in the back of my head sometimes that says, like, maybe that's too much to share, or what will people think if I post this? What are some of the challenges that make digital vulnerability feel so risky sometimes?
You're right. Those fears are very real. And there are some unique challenges that come with being vulnerable online. One of the biggest ones is the lack of nonverbal cues.
Oh, yeah. That's a big one.
In face-to-face conversations, we rely so much on body language, tone of voice, facial expressions to understand the full meaning behind someone's words.
Totally. Like you can tell if someone's joking or being sarcastic by their tone or their facial expression.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But online, all those rich cues are missing, which means there's a much higher risk of misinterpretation. You might share something vulnerable with the best intentions, but without those nonverbal signals, someone could easily misread your tone or your intent.
And that can lead to all sorts of misunderstandings and hurt feelings.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah.
And this lack of nonverbal cues can really amplify the fear of judgment. People might worry excessively about how their vulnerability will be perceived by their online network.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, will they be seen as weak or attention seeking or just oversharing? It's a lot to think about.
And these anxieties can have a real negative impact. They can actually reinforce those feelings of isolation. Because if we feel like we have to constantly project this perfect curated version of ourselves online, then we miss out on the opportunities for genuine connection that come from showing our true selves.
It's like we're all trapped in this performance of perfection, and it's actually making us feel more lonely.
It's a real paradox, isn't it?
Yeah.
We crave connection, but then we create these barriers that prevent us from truly connecting.
Exactly. So, how do we break free from that cycle? Let's shift gears now and talk about the amazing benefits that can come from embracing vulnerability online despite all these challenges. What do we stand to gain when we step outside of our comfort zone?
One of the most powerful things I've seen is how authentic online sharing can really break down those superficial barriers we were just talking about.
Yeah, it's like when someone shows their genuine self imperfections and all it creates this opening for real trust to develop. It's like they're saying, hey, this is me, take it or leave it.
And that's so refreshing in a world where everyone's trying to present this perfect image.
It is. It's like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
And it makes you want to connect with that person on a deeper level.
And even a small act of vulnerability can have a ripple effect. Think about someone in an online support group who bravely shares their struggles with a particular challenge.
I can picture that.
That one act of courage can resonate deeply with others who are going through the same thing, and it might give them the courage to open up too.
Yeah, it's like that first domino falling, and then it creates this chain reaction of openness and connection.
Exactly. And then the whole group benefits from that shared vulnerability.
That's so powerful. And we talked earlier about the mental health benefits of vulnerability online. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? How can being vulnerable actually support our well-being?
Absolutely. The research consistently shows that vulnerability fosters empathy. When we witness someone being open and honest about their experiences, it often evokes a sense of understanding and compassion within us.
That makes sense. It's like you're putting yourself in their shoes and feeling what they're feeling.
Right, and that shared understanding can be incredibly healing. It also directly counters those feelings of loneliness. Knowing that you're not alone in your struggles, that other people can relate to what you're going through, is incredibly validating.
It's like that feeling of, I'm seen, I'm understood, I'm not alone.
Exactly. And as we've discussed, those vulnerable exchanges can lead to the formation of supportive networks, genuine connections with people who truly care, and can offer encouragement and practical help during difficult times.
That's so important, especially in the online world where it can be easy to feel disconnected.
Right. These supportive networks can provide a real sense of belonging and community. And you mentioned the idea of case studies in online spaces where vulnerability has been key. What do those look like in the real world?
Yeah, give us some examples.
Think about online communities built around shared experiences, like maybe a forum for people navigating grief, or a support group for individuals managing a chronic illness.
I can see that.
In these spaces, you often see people sharing incredible personal and vulnerable stories. And what's striking is how these acts of vulnerability frequently lead to a deep sense of trust within the community.
Because they know they're not going to be judged or ridiculed.
Right? They feel safe enough to be truly honest because they witness others doing the same. And this shared vulnerability cultivates a powerful sense of belonging and mutual support. You see members offering heartfelt advice, sharing coping strategies, and simply being present for one another in a way that you might not find in more superficial online interactions.
So it's like those spaces become these havens of empathy and support.
Exactly. They're real-world examples of how vulnerability can be the foundation for strong online communities.
That's inspiring. So for those of us listening who want to cultivate more digital vulnerability in our own lives, what are some practical, actionable steps we can take? Like, how do we actually do this?
That's a great question. And it's not about suddenly oversharing every detail of your life with your entire online network.
Yeah, that's probably not the best approach.
It's about being intentional and gradually building your comfort level. So one practical tip is to start small. Begin by sharing more honest disclosures in online spaces where you already have a foundation of trust.
Like a private group chat with close friends or a smaller online community that you feel comfortable in.
Exactly. As you experience positive interactions and your sense of safety grows, you can gradually expand your openness to other online spaces.
That makes sense. What else can we do?
Another great strategy is to actively seek out and participate in online communities that are specifically designed to foster empathy and mutual support.
So like support groups or forums where people are already open to sharing and listening.
Exactly. And as we talked about earlier, understanding the culture of these spaces is key. Look for groups that have clear guidelines around respectful communication, active moderation to ensure a safe environment, and a stated intention of providing support and understanding.
So do your research and make sure it's a good fit for you.
Exactly. And remember, it's a two-way street. To encourage reciprocal sharing and build that essential sense of safety, it's important to actively practice empathetic listening and to validate the experiences of others.
So when someone shares something vulnerable with you, really take the time to hear them acknowledge their feelings and offer support in whatever way feels appropriate.
Exactly. That creates a positive feedback loop that encourages further openness and strengthens the bonds within the community.
I love that. It's like we're all in this together.
We are. And finally, before you choose to share something personal online, it can be incredibly helpful to incorporate mindfulness practices like journaling or even brief moments of meditation.
Mindfulness, that's a good one.
These practices can really enhance your self-awareness, help you better understand your own emotions, and allow you to reflect on what feels right for you to share and with whom.
So it's not just about blurting things out. It's about being thoughtful and intentional.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You mentioned some great resources earlier for people who want to explore this topic further.
Yeah.
What are some of the highlights?
Oh, yeah. There are so many amazing resources out there. If you're interested in learning more about vulnerability in general, I highly recommend checking out the work of Brené Brown, especially her book, Daring Greatly.
Oh, yes. Brené Brown is fantastic. Her work is so insightful.
It really is. And she has some great TED Talks on the subject of vulnerability as well. They're definitely worth a watch.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And beyond that, there are tons of digital well-being, blogs, articles, and even other podcasts that delve into the nuances of online connection and authentic self-expression.
So there's no shortage of information out there.
Not at all.
Okay, so to wrap things up, what are some of the overarching perspectives from experts who have dedicated their work to understanding vulnerability and online interactions? Like, what are the key takeaways they offer?
You know what's consistently highlighted by experts like Brené Brown and countless others who specialize in digital communication is the truly transformative power of vulnerability in fostering genuine connection.
They see it as a strength, not a weakness.
Exactly. It's about moving beyond those superficial online interactions and engaging with others on a deeper, more meaningful level.
And it's about recognizing that our shared humanity, with all its imperfections, is ultimately what connects us to one another, both online and offline.
Beautifully said.
So as we wrap up this digital sleepover, I wanted to leave you with one final thought. As you go about your digital life, how might intentionally practicing even small acts of digital vulnerability change your online experiences and the quality of your relationships moving forward?
What would happen if you allowed yourself to be just a little bit more open, a little bit more real in your digital interactions?
I encourage you to experiment with these ideas. Try putting some of these strategies into practice and see what happens.
Observe the impact it has on your connections and on your own sense of well-being.
It might just surprise you.
It might. And that's the beauty of this journey of self-discovery and connection in this ever-evolving digital landscape.
And as always, we'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic. Have you experienced the power of digital vulnerability? What strategies are you excited to try?
Share your reflections in the comments section, wherever you're listening. Let's keep this conversation going and create our own little corner of authentic connection online.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into digital vulnerability. We'll be back soon with another digital sleepover. Until then, take care and stay connected authentically. Good night, everyone.